Did it
All
show
right.
up? Yeah, so we have to.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yeah, got it. So,
First words opening the presentation.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, welcome everyone. And I'm just going to hand it over to Jaworski.
hi everyone. I'm waving to the camera in front of me, but also to the audience here. So, thanks for coming today. Sorry for a few minutes of just, sorting out the technical side of things here, different screens and displays. I'm part of the SciLife Lab Training Hub. I'm a Canadian as well, if you haven't met me before. And I'm here to talk about reflective learning and some practices that you can use in day-to-day life with your self and with other people that you interact with. So we'll talk about what is reflective learning, how can reflective learning support individual and group learning, how reflection can support personal and professional development, and mental health as well, some topics that I'm especially passionate about, and some reflective practices that you can do yourself with groups and how to use them in day-to-day life so that you're practicing these things regularly. So what is reflective learning? It's the practice of using critical thinking skills and examining our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, challenges. You'll hear me say that a lot through this presentation, and exploring those different areas so that we can identify the things that we're really good at, but also where we can grow. So this process is going to help learners become more aware of those different aspects of themselves, more aware of the learning process and the conditions that are needed for success and growth, as well as their own sense of self. You'll hear me talk about reflection as a few different things. It can be like an outcome, it can be an activity, it can be like the just kind of very inward, like self-exploration. It can be used as an example, as a definition, all kinds of different things. So you can think about reflection in a few different ways. So reflective learning is kind of something that came in the late 30s from John Dewey. He's written a lot about it. He's an American philosopher and psychiatrist, and much of the practice of reflective learning comes from writings that he developed, and something that really embodies the kind of essence of his work is we don't learn from experiences, we learn from reflecting on the experience. So there's several different aspects of the learning process that reflection can help us, dive deeper into. It can help us better understand our prior knowledge, how we organize that knowledge. It can help us understand our motivations as well as learners and as people, walking through this world. It can help us with skill development and becoming more attuned to how to go about improvement. It can inform our goals, and it can help us with self-development and developing self-efficacy as well. So I'll talk about these each individually, and then I'll provide some questions that you can, save for future reflections and practice, or to try out in conversation, maybe over fika one day. And we'll go through each of these. Some of them I think pair together really nicely as well. So reflection and prior knowledge can help a group or an individual to just bring information to mind. When we think about like learning as a process, it's kind of analogous in a sense to doing a warm-up before you go for a run. Like you have to activate kind of the knowledge that you have. And sometimes it takes a moment before you go like, okay, yes, I remember. Okay, I can build upon that. I can draw those things together. That active recall is helpful for checking our level of understanding and how quickly we can bring those things to mind. Is it instant, or does it take us a moment? Do we have to kind of jog our memory before it comes back? It can give us a better sense of, testing ourselves as well. What level are we at on the Bloom scale? If you're not familiar with Bloom's, the idea behind Bloom's taxonomy is that there are different levels of depth towards how we are able to apply our knowledge. So it begins at remembering, and it works its way all the way up to creation as well. Within this, different framework, we can kind of see prompt questions around what that level of depth looks like. Is it, thinking about being back in school? Is this a multiple choice question? Is this a mix and match? Or is this you creating, your thesis? There's a huge variety of scope in between as well, as we know. So reflection can also help us gain a better sense of what those gaps are. Maybe across a topic, you're really strong in some aspects of it, but not so strong in others. Maybe there's a fair amount of middle ground. Maybe there are things where once you start testing yourself or checking your understanding, you realize there's a gap. So this is an important process because we can help identify the areas that we can and may want to improve upon. So some questions that you could ask yourself are things like, could I explain this to someone else? Maybe somebody who doesn't know anything about the subject. Can I give them enough detail and depth and examples and understanding to help somebody who's completely new, get to maybe not to the same level that you're at, but advance through some of the steps of Bloom's. What level of Bloom's taxonomy do I understand this topic to? Because maybe as you find that you're having a conversation with somebody who doesn't know the subject, they ask you questions as well, and you realize that through their questioning, you get a better sense of where you're at yourself, and maybe there are things that you've overlooked. And how can I improve this knowledge gap? Is this something I can do on my own? Is this something where I need a guide? Are there resources that I can draw on? What kind of things can I do? So knowledge organization is kind of going to the next step of that. So you might understand, a topic, series of topics. How do you fit those different pieces of information together? How do you organize them once you acquire new information as well? So reflection can help us create a meta-awareness of how we make sense of what we know. It can help us create structure around how we categorize different types of information, how we kind of translate them between different categories, how we view them, emotionally as well. It can also help learners understand their own mental model and the mental models of others. And questions that we can ask around those things are things like, what is my mental model around a topic? How do I understand something? How do I see or understand that other people are, presenting their mental models? Are they different? Are they the same? Are there gaps? Is there overlap? What ways that do they differ? How does my mental model evolve over time as well? Something where you have like a paradigm shift over time, or maybe a more subtle evolution than that as well. And what do I do when I take in conflicting information? How do I make sense of that? We also know that motivation is a huge part of the learning process as well. So reflection can help a learner or a group develop strategies to apply in the future and hopefully keep motivation enough to keep progressing on something, because learning tends to take a fair amount of time. And, as an advocate for lifelong learning, something that is going to happen throughout your life in various ways. So looking at the kind of image here, we know there's different types of motivation. I'm a runner. Probably in all my presentations, you'll hear me say that at some point, and that will be my go-to kind of like metaphor for things. So we have different types of motivations broadly categorized into intrinsic and extrinsic motivations, things that come from in versus things that come outward and motivate us. So is this something that I want to learn because I love it? I'm very passionate about it. Or is it something that you're learning because there's an obligation to, with or without enjoyment to it? So I think it's always important to ask yourself, what motivates me? And really take that next step to the question and go, and why do I feel motivated? Is there a reward? Is there an outcome that I'm looking for? Is there a certain amount of enjoyment to it? Are there other factors that motivate you? And then the flip side of that too is what demotivates you, because I I think that that's an often kind of overlooked aspect of the learning process as well. There's always going to be things here and there through life where, it's not as, immediate or rewarding or, fulfilling in a variety of different ways, and it won't necessarily come easily. Is that something that's worth overcoming? Are there barriers perhaps as well to that learning process? What are those things and how can they be, adapted or dealt with in a way that helps you stay on track and keep working towards your goals? So furthering that question, what can I do when I'm demotivated, and what can I do to become motivated again? Thinking about, am I somebody that likes to learn with others or work on goals with others? Is it a very individual thing? Are there things that I need to do to reward myself? Is it about habit? Have I reached like a plateau or an obstacle that makes things difficult and has set me back? In terms of what I can put forward, do I need help? Things like that can help you move forward when you're demotivated. So reflection and skill development as well. So this is something that's presented usually towards people that are providing student support, looking towards helping a learner come from that unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence. There's different, prompts here that go along with that. Starting off with, I don't know what I don't know, all the way up to, I can do it with my eyes closed and it's no problem. It's something that's kind of automatic now. But skill development takes time and is something that is best done when it's a very conscious and deliberate process, where you're aware of the different aspects and how you're making progress across them, and looking to be specific about how you can make changes along the way. So reflection can help with learners acquiring competent skills, practicing and integrating those skills, and then applying the skills so that they can make use of them. So don't need to ask anyone specifically, but thinking about, something that maybe you're working on right now, reflect on things like, where am I in this scale? I know when it comes to learning Swedish as well, there are times where I'm like, I don't even know what I don't know, but I would put myself somewhere in the middle now. And then how can I get the help that helps me support the process along the way? We all have blind spots as well, and help can really identify what those things are. So until you start practicing, you might think that you're making really great progress on something, and maybe you are, but maybe there's something you're overlooking that's, would help you that much more, or is a skill that you're not making use of that goes along with it, and you need to work on that too. So help and support and guidance, having a mentor or a coach or somebody that can, help assess you in a kind and meaningful way that gives you constructive criticism, can really help you identify where you're at on this scale and how you can move forward so that you're progressing. Reflection and goals as well. Last time in one of the seminars here, I talked about goal setting, so we'll kind of build upon some of the ideas from that presentation too. So reflection can help a learner or a group to develop strategies to apply in the future to increase their odds of success, help them build opportunities for deliberate practice, identify the right level of challenge as well. There's kind of a sweet spot so that it's difficult enough that you're motivated. There's a challenge associated with it, but it's not so difficult that it's overwhelming or that it can't be accomplished for where your skill is at right now. And then planning for accumulating that practice, because whether it's, learning an instrument, or it's, or training towards a 5K, or it's learning Swedish, these are things that build upon time. There's a forgetting curve when it comes to information, and for anything more motor associated as well, there's processes there that require an accumulation of practice and structure to it as well. So thinking about those things, reflection can help you identify what your goals are, help you make sense of where you're at with those goals as well. Have you set the right level for yourself? Is it too challenging? Is it accomplishable at this time? Thinking about the SMART principles. It can help you set better goals for yourself and then help you assess where you're at with those goals too. And then reflection and self-development. So reflection can help a learner or a group become more self-aware of their individual and group learning needs and preferences. There's a lot of different things out there about learning styles or preferences. We've kind of moved away from some of those very broad categorizations of things like I'm a visual learner, I'm a kinesthetic learner, I'm an oral learner, into more things around learning preferences. So that is much more around the idea of that flexibility of you might have different preferences around how you learn for different things that you're taking in and trying to develop. It's not so much the case that somebody is always all visual or all auditory, but preferences can really impact motivation as well as memory, as well as your like sense of self-efficacy and confidence as well. So these are things that are important to reflect on. The reflection process can also help us gain insights again into our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and challenges, as well as your like inner talents as well, helping you recognize things that you're good at. Sometimes those things are really obvious, sometimes they're more subtle, and sometimes that reflection process can help tease those out. Reflection can also help the group develop more cooperation and learn to work together more effectively so that they can draw on each other's strengths and make better progress in an easier way. It can also help you learn why the way that you learn, and then how we make sense of the information that we do. So as I had written there in a slightly more elegant way than I just said, how and why they learn the way they learn, and as well as how and why they think what they do, because those things are a little bit different. So some reflective questions. One of these we will do later on in the room and online is a favorite question I used to ask students all the time in my previous position is, how do I learn best? I think that is something that we don't ask ourselves often enough. And it's a difficult question often. So when do I learn best is another follow-up to that as well. Thinking about, you know, am I an early riser? Am I more of a night owl? Is it more situation specific than that? Are there conditions that help me succeed? Am I distracted easily? Do I like my quiet time? Do I like to be with a group? Is that motivating? Is it distracting? There's so many different factors there. Those are only just a few. But what conditions help me succeed? What barriers or obstacles make learning more difficult? Do I like this subject as well? Does it serve my future goals? Does it align with my personal values? Does it energize me? What strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges do I observe in a group setting as well? Am I helping others do their best work? How and when do I contribute? And when and where did I learn this information or behavior? Things to think about. So building upon that, our last one is about reflection and self-efficacy. So reflection can help us develop confidence. It can help us practice a growth mindset, and is something that can help us become more self-compassionate. And as we become more self-compassionate, we become more resilient, more likely to overcome failures, more likely to see failure as an opportunity for growth as well. So it helps you reframe failures, and therefore keep trying and keep working on whatever it is that you're trying to develop. So asking yourself things like, do I have a growth mindset or a closed mindset, or am I somewhere in between? What tends to sway me one way or another? Are there external factors or barriers that push me in one direction? Are there things that enhance my sense of self-efficacy and confidence? What does my inner critic sound like? As people within STEM, I think we're very used to hopefully constructive criticism, but things that come in the form of, this is something you need to improve on. But is that something that you do too often with yourself? Are you too harsh? Again, thinking about that sweet spot of motivation. You want to set a challenge that is reachable, but you don't want to be so hard on yourself as well when it's not reached that you decide it's not worth trying anymore. So self-efficacy can be influenced by a variety of different factors here. Things like performance experience, your past experiences, vicarious experiences, things that you observe, social persuasion as well, like coaching and feedback. And again, what types of feedback are you taking in? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it too often too positive or too often too negative? What does it sound like as well? Is it constructive? The imagined experience of like visualizing, yourself going through those motions and steps, and then as well our emotional and physical states of being. So thank you for listening to my presentation. I have some reflection and discussion questions that I encourage you to think about. If you're online, you're welcome to try to answer some of these questions in the chat. My favorite one here is how do you learn best, our very last one. And we'll start to field some questions. So if you have anything, we'll take the ones in the chat first, and then we will broaden it out to the rest of the group here too. So thank you for listening.